Hello everyone, and in this final video for AQA A English Literature A2 Paper 2 Section A, we've been looking at what a full mark answer looks like. So we've gone through the mark scheme, we've gone through the planning and the writing, but now what does it look like? So here's our question once more. To what extent do you agree that the poems in this selection are anti-heroic? So again, this is based very much on the style and way in which your exam questions will be structured. And let's look at how we write the response that we've been talking about. During the First World War, hundreds of men were executed for desertion and cowardice, despite their terrifying experiences in the trenches and the ensuing mental consequences of being subjected to such conditions. It is not surprising then that poets such as Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon were keen to dispel the myth that such men were merely cowards, by describing the realities of life and death in the trenches. To say that all poems in the anthology are anti-heroic, so there's the context, I'm laying out the poems I'm talking about, now here's the argument here again. To say that all the poems in the anthology are anti-heroic is inaccurate. Early war poems, such as A Volunteer by Herbert Asquith, reflect the ideals of the traditional romantic canon. However, it is fair to say that most poems, such as Sassoon's Glory of Women and Subalterns by Elizabeth Dayrush, are fiercely anti-heroic. So there's the argument, nice and clear. I'm already starting to compare, I'm already starting to use context, I'm achieving marks in the introduction, which sometimes is tricky for us to do. Asquith's The Volunteer is easily recognisable as a traditional patriotic war poem for several reasons. Firstly, its position at the start of the anthology means it was written before the horrifying truths about the trenches came to light. We might anticipate then the antiquated language which makes war sound so idealistic. Asquith describes a clerk with no lance broken in life's tournament. He uses a euphemism to suggest that he has no experience of war and is yet to discover the satisfaction of battle. Alternatively, so here's an alternative viewpoint, Asquith unknowingly highlights the sense of emasculation that writers such as Owen and Sassoon express in their later war work, who both come to see war as something unheroic through their own experiences. Furthermore, the reference to chivalry harkens to knights in shining armour, suggesting that men who go to war are traditionally heroic figures in medieval games, highlighting the sport of war. Furthermore, the subject of the poem escapes his unsatisfactory life in a city grey by reading with bright eyes about the gleaming eagles of the legions and the men of Agincourt. Once again, Asquith lists past heroic figures such as the Roman army to suggest that war places the once grey, suggesting boring and lifeless figures, in a position of immortality, highlighting the heroic nature of war. So he can see the AO2 taking place as well as context being used here. Furthermore, the constant use of iambic pentameters for structure not only helps to stress words such as now, to highlight the positive impact of war to the reader, but create a meter which suggests marching, reflecting the strong, organised and heroic soldiers who have gone before. In this way, Asquith likens war to a game, much like Jessie Pope in the recruitment poem Who is for the Game, which encouraged men to sign up by comparing war to a football match, using the reference to sporting heroes rather than military ones. Rather than using the same syllabic structure, Pope reverts to a shorter style in order to highlight the thrill and excitement of combat, rather than highlight the sense of organisation and order Asquith uses to reassure the reader. Pope's lexical choices are far more active than Asquith's, using sporting semantic fields such as tackle and grip to reinforce the idea of taking part rather than be on the sidelines, acting in a cowardly manner. Furthermore, both poets use a split structure in order to highlight the heroics of war, whereas Asquith uses a two-stanza structure to demonstrate the eternal heroism associated with dying for one's country, dreamed as satisfied. Pope uses an alternate rhyme scheme to present a sense of sides, the heroic men who participated and the cowards who want to seat in the stand. It is clear, therefore, that Asquith and Pope's poems perpetuates a heroic vision of war. So there's one point, that's how you structure it. Let's look at the start of another one just so we get the idea. Similarly, the poem Subalterns by Elizabeth Dayrush uses a two-part structure to reflect two contrasting views. However, the meaning created is very different. In Asquith's poem, the structure conveys a life fulfilled by being a hero, whereas in this poem she uses the structure to highlight misconceptions about heroism. She uses glib rhyme to mock the ignorance, so on and so forth. So we get the idea of how our main paragraphs will work. And then to conclude, whilst it is true that there is indeed an anti-heroic sentiment within both Subalterns and Glory of Women, which are taken from later on in the anthology as they try to reflect only the true nature of war to the reader. Earlier works such as Asquith's Volunteer do initially present a heroic representation of war, suggesting that the question statement isn't entirely correct. There's my argument, making sure it's nice and clear throughout. All you need to make sure you do is practice planning, practice answering, and good luck. Thank you, well done.